Well, happy Monday, my AP Psych students. Hope you're enjoying your day off and then election day tomorrow. But here's what we got going on for the test, which is coming up Wednesday and Thursday. Just a couple of reminders. Wednesday is free response test. You've got your research-based questions, to know your research stuff, your experiment, all those terms, definitions, that's all good to know. And then, of course, stuff that covers this material here. And then Thursday's our multiple choice test. Thursday with 60 multiple choice total, 40 of them covering this material that I'm about to run through right here, and then 20 from the first 3 units. So again, it's worth looking at those Quizlets or something to refresh you to the material in the first 3 units here. So starting off with classical conditioning. So remember classical conditioning, I always remember the classic example is Pavlov with his dogs, where you learn that one thing pairs with another thing and elicits a response. So a couple of reminders I'm going to write down here at the bottom. Okay, you got all your definitions here, but remember as we went through the quiz, and I know I let you re-quiz because we kind of struggled with this the first time around, the best way of thinking about this is to ask yourselves 2 questions. Number 1, is it the cause of the response? If it's the cause, that is the stimulus. Okay, so if it's something that causes or elicits a response, that is the stimulus. If it's the response itself, or the reaction, we could say, okay, if it's the reaction, then it's going to be, we just call that the response. Okay, so again, getting a stomach bug and that causing you to throw up, the stomach bug is the cause. That's the stimulus, the thing that's causing the particular reaction, which is nausea, vomiting, things like that. That's the response, okay? So that's the first thing you want to ask when you're evaluating what is this thing. Is it the cause of, or is it the actual response to it? And then if it's normal, if that's something that you should normally do when you get a stomach bug, you get nauseous, that's a normal thing. So that is unconditioned, does not have to be taught. Okay, and then if it's not normal, okay, so again, if you ate pizza right before you got a stomach bug, and then you're vomiting all night, now when you think about pizza or smell pizza, or see pizza, it makes you nauseous or makes you vomit. That's not normal. Pizza normally tastes wonderful and is a great thing. So if it's a not normal thing, then it's conditioned, okay? So it's something that our body has learned these 2 things go together. So if you remember those steps, you should be able to have a leg up in identifying what part it's talking about. So as you go through this real quick, neutral stimulus, again, on its own, pizza is a neutral stimulus. It should not elicit any kind of response other than tasty or things like that. Conditioned, unconditioned stimulus, and a stimulus that automatically elicits a response. Again, going back to the Pavlov and his dog thing, that's the food. Unconditioned response. And the thing, remember about the unconditioned or response, whether unconditioned or conditioned, response has to be physical, innate, biological. Salivation, feeling nauseous, feeling fearful, getting excited. All these things are natural biological responses, natural bodily responses to various stimuli. Okay, so the unconditioned response is something that happens, again, dog sees food, dog salivates. All right, salivation is the unconditioned response. The conditioned stimulus is the thing that should not elicit a response, but it does. So in this case, the tuning fork, after the dog has been conditioned to expect food with a tuning fork. And then the conditioned response is the same as the unconditioned response. Remember, those 2 are always the same. Okay, so this guy and this guy are always the same. The difference is, why are you responding? If a dog is responding to food, again, coming down here, that's normal. It's normal for dogs to respond to food, so that's unconditioned. If the dog is responding to a tuning fork, that's not normal. Dogs do not normally respond to tuning forks, so that's the conditioned stimulus. So, response. Remember that, so there's responses are always the same thing, it's a matter of why. Okay, but if you keep these steps in mind, that usually helps as you're going through the process. Couple different terms here that you need to know. Acquisition, that's kind of the process. You don't need to know that term by itself. You may see the idea, you probably won't see the term higher order conditioning or second order conditioning. What you are going to see though is the process. And so remember here, tuning fork eventually equals salivation. We've trained the dog that a tuning fork equals food, so that equals salivation. Then you start adding a tuning fork with the blue light, and that equals salivation. And eventually a blue light by itself will equal salivation. Okay, so that's called higher order or second order conditioning. The process is what you need to know more than the term. I don't see the term showing up in the test, but the process you will need to know. Extinction, that's important to know. If you continue to offer a conditioned stimulus, but not give the food, in this case, you stop, eventually the dog will stop salivating. Spontaneous recovery, that's when it comes back right afterward. Okay, you might need to know that. So you have extinguished it, but then you give the dog the tuning fork and the food again, and the dog realizes, oh wait, I was wrong, there is still a connection. Generalization, that's where different types of stimuli can elicit a similar response. So you eat a McDonald's hamburger and you vomit later that night. Well, now all hamburgers, maybe even all fast food makes you feel nauseous, right? So that would be a generalization. You're generalizing different stimuli that are similar enough to the condition one. So generalization could show up. And then taste aversion, this definitely shows up quite a bit. The idea, again, of getting sick shortly after we eat food, and we don't want that food again. All right, the little Albert experiment, it does show up. Just kind of know the basics. This was the experiment where the little boy, 9-month-old boy, was shown a white rat. Was not afraid of the rat, but then they start hitting this hammer against a steel bar right behind the kid's head. Every time he touches the rat, eventually the kid becomes afraid of the rat. Okay, so just kind of know the general idea of the little Albert experiment. But otherwise, that's what you need to know about classical conditioning. Again, think of Pavlov with his classic example. All right, operant conditioning. Remember, I always remember this. This is what a parent does, rewards and punishments. Okay, rewards and punishments to try to encourage behavior or discourage behavior. All right, so we'll get into the nuances in a second here, but first, just some things. B.F. Skinner and Edward Thorndike, okay, you may see those names, probably more so, not by themselves, associated with the idea. Law of effect does show up in the text, I'll tell you that. Behavior is followed by good consequences, makes you more likely to do them. Behavior is followed by negative consequences, such as punishments, less likely to do them. Shaping, they love to ask about shaping. This idea of rewarding people only for new progress as they move toward a goal. They'll ask that in various forms. You'll see that quite a bit. Discriminative stimulus is, again, training dogs, animals, could be people as well, to pick out very specific stimuli. Okay, like it says, you show a pigeon a bunch of pictures. When they peck, when they see a human face, they start to recognize, they can differentiate human faces from other types of images. Dogs can find certain scents in all the other scents that they're given. So things like that, discriminative stimulus can show up. All right, so the key here with reinforcement and punishment, okay, coming to the back, again, just kind of a reminder of things how you want to look at it. You want to ask, the first question, is something being added or taken away? Okay, if it's something that's added, that's going to be positive. Okay, and if it's something that's taken away, I don't know why I wrote taking. We'll just say taken away. Okay, if it's something that's taken away, that's going to end up being negative. Okay, so the first question you want to ask when you're looking at a scenario for reinforcement or punishment is something being added or is it taken away? And is it something that they like? Okay, if it's something that they like, or is it something that they don't like? Okay, and that'll determine, again, we use that kind of process to figure out if it's one or the other. Okay, so like or don't like. So again, positive reinforcement, easier to remember, that's more of something they like, okay? So getting a treat for, for the dog doing a trick. Okay, dog does a trick, they get a treat, that's more of something they like, pretty simple. Negative reinforcement, again, don't get tripped up in the word negative, it means something's being taken away they don't like. So less of something they don't like. So again, classic example is your mom, dad's nagging you about something, you eventually do it just to get them to stop nagging, they're taking away that thing that you don't like. All right, again, not a punishment, something that provides relief. Positive punishment, is more of something that people don't like, so spankings are a good example of that. Anything that you don't like that is added to you. Negative punishment is less of something you do like. So this is something you like being taken away, getting your cell phone taken away, getting TV time taken away, can't hang out with your friends on the weekend, so time with your friends being taken away. Those are all examples of negative punishment. But it's pretty simple if you just remember that kind of this little more of something you like, less of something you don't like, and so forth. If you remember it that way, usually it's a pretty simple process. All right, next one, outline here, reinforcement schedule. Continuous reinforcement, remember that's giving a treat or giving a response every time it occurs. Again, make sure you know the good and the bad. The good and the bad is learning can happen very quickly. You learn very quick every time I do this. I get a treat, you learn very quickly, and you keep doing it. But the problem is when that stops happening, you can kind of stop the behavior pretty quickly. So you learn it very quickly, it can also stop very quickly. Partial reinforcement is when you only get a reward part of the time. Again, good and bad. The good is takes longer to learn a response, but it has it's less resistant to extinction. Okay. So then we talk about the frequency, which is how often. Okay, and again, the key word here, fixed, means predictable. So the first thing you want to ask is the thing being given at a predictable amount of time or variable is unpredictable. Okay, you don't know when the payoff or the reward is going to be. So is it predictable or unpredictable? And then is it a thing you have to do, okay, which is ratio. So ratio is a certain number of events or responses. Interval is time. Okay, I just got to wait my time. So based on that, you get the 4 scenarios. Again, fixed ratio, buy 10, get 1 free every 5 stars you collect. So that's fixed because it's predictable and it's a ratio. There's a number of things you have to do to earn that. Okay, variable ratio, that is you have to do some things, but it's unpredictable. Again, slot machines are the classic example. Gambling, how many times do I have to pull the lever to get the payout? So it's something you're doing and it's unpredictable. Remember though, this is key, of the 4 types, this is the most effective at reinforcing behavior. When you occasionally win something, it just keeps you coming back to that well over and over again. Number 3, fixed interval. So again, it's a length of time you have to wait, but it's predictable. So again, tell a kid you read for 30 minutes, then you get to play video games. So it's predictable, okay, and it's an amount of time. Variable interval, you don't know how long you have to wait, but it's an amount of time you have to wait. Okay, so again, just kind of follow that process. Ask those 2 questions. Number 1, is it predictable or unpredictable? That'll tell you fixed or variable. And then is it something you have to do, or is it a certain amount of time you have to wait? Okay, and that'll tell you if it's ratio or interval. And then the other thing, a couple things here. Again, ideally it happens quicker. The more immediate it happens, the more quickly it can be conditioned, so that's important. Primary reinforcer, again, this is something that serves a biological need, such as food or warmth or whatever. Secondary reinforcers are things that are connected to a primary reinforcer, such as the ticket example, money, things like that. The phrase token economy does show up on the test. This idea that you work for something like tickets or stars or stickers or whatever else, and then you can cash those in for rewards for things that you actually like, okay, things that meet a biological need. So those are secondary reinforcers. But other than that, that should be good. Again, just follow that process. You'll figure out the reinforcement schedule. And then lastly, the application. Latent learning, so first of all, make sure you know the name Edward Tolman. There's a question that says who developed or who advanced the idea of latent learning. That's Edward Tolman, is latent learning. This is the idea that not every single thing do we have to be either rewarded or punished for in order to learn it. Sometimes we just learn for the sake of learning, right? And so we find that there's a learning that takes place just by living and being around. And so cognitive map, this is a term that definitely shows up. It's our mental layout of an environment, so make sure you know that. Insight learning, there's a question or two on insight learning. That's that aha moment, as I call it, the sudden realization that, oh my gosh, here's the solution. It's not a step-by-step process. You got there, it's just you're thinking of it, and then all of a sudden it just comes to you. Observational learning, that does show up, learning by observing others, and then the term mirror neurons do show up as well. These neurons that when we watch someone else perform something, an action, we are actually learning by that. There are neurons that are firing while that's happening. Motivation, intrinsic motivation is, again, doing something simply because you enjoy doing it. Again, they love to specifically ask about this right here. Okay, very important. A couple different questions on, hey, a kid just loves to read. What should you do? Just let them read. Don't offer a reward or a punishment. If you do start offering rewards or things like that, they actually tend to do it less. So make sure you know that, because that does show up. Extrinsic motivation, again, behaving in such a way to get a reward or punishment. Not as good as intrinsic, but can still work by all means. And then the idea of perception of control, again, internal locus of control. This is the idea that you are in charge of your actions. You will see a question or two on problem-focused coping. If you think you are in charge of your destiny, you go right after the problem itself, okay? Now, external locus of control, these are people that think, no matter what I do, my fate is decided. I cannot control or change or influence my fate. And so external locus of control, things are outside of our control. This tends to lead to emotion-focused coping instead of trying to attack the problem, because remember, you can't change the problem. The problem is what it is. You try to numb the feelings that it's creating or things like that. Learned helplessness, you're also definitely going to see that. The idea that people eventually resign themselves to, you know what, there's nothing I can do to change my lot in life, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to give up and stop trying. You don't really see much on self-control. I mean, it kind of is covered up there. So those are the main things. I know we highlighted a lot. The good news about this particular unit, there aren't, I don't think, 100 different terms, brand new terms and concepts to know. There's a few things that's just kind of the applying of those things. Applying of the classical conditioning, identifying the different parts, the operant conditioning, the different types of punishments or reinforcements or punishments, and then reinforcement schedules. Okay, so most of that's application, and that's what a lot of the questions are. So if you kind of know the process, it really shouldn't be too hard of a test. But by all means, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email before we get to class on Wednesday. And then otherwise, that's what I got for you guys. So hopefully that helps. And like I said, I'll see you on Wednesday. If I don't see you on Wednesday, because you're not going to be here, I'll email instructions for how to take the test online for those that haven't done that yet. So otherwise, though, guys, hope to see you back here soon, and enjoy your next couple days off.